Good people YouTube, I'm the Watch Idiot, and I've made it clear before that I really enjoy steel bezeled watches, and I really enjoy GMTs, and I really enjoy Seikos. So of course, when the new Seiko 5 SSK023 Field GMT was released, it piqued my interest. However, I didn't jump on it because I'm not really the biggest fan of field watches specifically, but I figured that, this is a good time to try something new, so I got one in for the channel. So in this video, I'm gonna get into the details about this new release, the dimensions, how it wears on the wrist, dial, case, bracelet, all that good stuff, to see what's what. And I guess I need to call this a budget Explorer II alternative since, yeah, I guess it could be, but I'll explain why in reality, saying that is a bit of a stretch in many more ways than one. So yeah, let's just get into it. First, as always, let's do the dimensions, and the battery in my caliper died, so we'll work with the nearest 10th here, I suppose. And we've got ourselves a 39mm case with a thickness of 13.6 millimeters and a lug-to-lug of 47.5 millimeters. And it wears exactly as you'd expect a 39mm watch to wear. I mean, there's no Seiko mind games here making it wear smaller and thinner, since it is a very simple case. And I know some folks will make a big deal of the 13.6mm thick case, but that's including the slightly domed Rolex crystal. I really wish it was flat, just so I wouldn't have to deal with all the reflections. For me, flat crystals for life. On the wrist, it really wears like a slightly thicker field watch, I suppose. But that means that it's also very comfortable since the case back tapers down to the top of your wrist, and that makes the whole watch sit lower on the wrist. In the end, 13.6 millimeters isn't really that big of a deal on paper, nor is it a big deal on the wrist. Compared to the Alpinist GMT, you can see that they are quite similar in size, and I very nearly started to get into the details between these two watches, but comparing these will be a different video. And here it is next to its stablemate, the SSK001 Seiko 5 GMT, just for a little bit more context. Then there's the 20mm bracelet with the drilled lugs, which is a fantastic combo, and the bracelet tapers down to 18mm, which isn't the most, but it works for this style of bracelet. More details on the bracelet in the bracelet section, but the good thing is that on the wrist, everything looks proportional, and then the watch feels balanced on the wrist at 144 gram size for my 7.5-inch wrist, or a 19cm wrist, which is just right for a solid feeling watch of this size. Oh, and finally, this has 100 meters of water resistance, which is great, and the movement is the 4R34 collar GMT movement. I like it on my SSK001, so I have no reason to not like it here. And yeah, it's been gaining about 7-ish seconds a day, maybe a touch more than that, which is very solid performance. And now onto the dial, and oh man, I have a lot to say about the dial, but overall I think I am now starting to enjoy it more, but many of the elements are still a bit bizarre to me. The dial itself is a slightly textured matte black one, and the indices are white and raised, and if you look closely you can see that there is a little bit of a metallic surround to it below, but the disappointing thing is that the indices aren't loomed. The little markers on the outside edges are what's loomed. Definitely not a lume monster. The hands are pretty good, but yeah, in the end, it's a field watch. It's not supposed to be a lume monster. The hour, minute, and second hands are simple and nicely designed, and I really like that the hour and minute hands have a brush finish, and then there's the orange GMT hand, which Seiko says is red, and I guess it is, but to me it's more of an orange, so I guess an orangey red. You can see for yourself. But color aside, I don't know how I feel about the shovel style hand, because it's not bad, obviously. I love it on all of my divers, and I guess therein lies the problem. This hand is very uniquely a Seiko diver hand, a second hand to be more specific. So to see it here on a field watch and as a 24-hour hand is just a little bit off-putting to me. And also I think that the hand, in terms of the design, regardless of the connections to the dive watches, it's just a bit too geometric and angular to go with such a classic watch. But in the end, who knows? Let's see what happens. Maybe this will just end up being a quirk that I really like about this watch. And listen, I respect Seiko for wanting to do something different to make this watch stand out and be more Seiko compared to other field watches that would otherwise look the same, but in doing so, they might have sacrificed some cohesion, I suppose. Also, the 24-hour track of sorts on the dial really confused me at first, because when I first saw it, I was pretty much furious. I was thinking, like, why on earth did Seiko do a 24-hour track on the inside on the dial when there is a non-rotatable bezel that already has one? But then I realized that this was just the 24-hour military time conversion that can be seen on some field watches, so I calmed down after that. But even still, it isn't required on all field watches. The Dirty Dozen watches didn't have them, and in this case, since they're already going off-piste by adding a GMT hand and a 24-hour bezel, they could have easily left off that track. Although I am happy that it is gray and not too in your face. So Seiko, if you're listening somehow, maybe learn to edit yourself a little bit. Less is more sometimes. And I know I've been ragging on the different elements of this watch, but overall I still do enjoy the experience of seeing it on my wrist because the traditional field watch numerals remain the most prominent feature on this watch. So that is exactly what I would want from a field watch. So let's get the case out of the way. It's a very standard field watchy, pilot's watchy case that we've seen hundreds of times before. And the brushing is solid and it's got drilled lugs, which is always a plus point. It makes taking the bracelet off really, really easy. And it's got a see-through case back. And I'm always a fan of see-through case backs because in the very rare occasion that I actually do look at the case back, I enjoy seeing the rotor and the escapement moving. It's always fun to see these tiny little mechanisms working away because in the end, this is kind of why we all got into watches. And now the bezel, and this is where people are gonna say that it's just another Explorer II, and sure, it's got a fixed steel bezel with black numerals and a sunburst finish that's actually surprisingly good, but Rolex hasn't trademarked this combination, and given that literally every single element on the dial is, and the case for that matter, and the bracelet for that matter, is different, you know, save for the dial color and the indices. I think it's a bit much to say that they look anything alike, really. Are they similar? Yes, they have similar feels in that if you're like me and you enjoy steel bezel sports watches, you'll enjoy this watch in roughly the same way that you'll enjoy an Explorer II. But it just bothers me when people say that any GMT watch that has a steel bezel with some sort of numerals on it is just another Explorer II. No, they're similar, but definitely not the same. And that's kind of like saying that any black dial, black bezel diver is just automatically a sub, regardless of any other dial element. It's, I don't know. I mean, watch nuts like us, we're all about the details. So how can we just forego every detail pretty much? So yeah, rant over. And now the bracelet, and I was decently surprised here because Seiko 5 bracelets usually aren't that great, although the SSK001 bracelet was pretty solid. So it seems like the GMTs get better bracelets because I really don't have too much to complain about here. The bracelet tapers down from 20 millimeters to 18 millimeters, and I usually like a bit more of a taper, but it works here because of the style of the bracelet, which is 5 links across, all the same width just about. And I think that this style of bracelet works with this watch because it's all brushed, thank God. But also it reminds me of the IWC Pilots watches with their own multi-link bracelets. Also, another thing that I like is that the thickness of the bracelet works perfectly with the watch head. It's chunky enough to make it look and feel like a solid tool watch, but also at the same time, it's not too unnecessarily thick, and just kind of like my Captain Willard bracelet. On the wrist, it isn't pulling my wrist hair, which I wasn't fully expecting, so I'm pleasantly surprised that it's working on my particular wrist and type of hair, I suppose. Of course, Seiko being Seiko, they put on a stamped clasp, which I guess it does the job, and most importantly, it is comfortable on the wrist. But that being said, I pretty much always swap out Seiko clasp for a standard upgraded generic 18 millimeter clasp, just to make it a little bit more solid. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, and yeah, you can just get these on Amazon for like 15-20 bucks. So yeah, I'll link it somewhere in the description or pinned comment. All in all, given this bracelet and the watch head itself, I think for Seiko it works at $435, but of course the price will eventually come down, which will make this even better value eventually. So let me know down in the comments what you think about this new release, and hit the like and subscribe button as always if you enjoyed the video, and until the next video, good day.